The shadow protocol, the photograph arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under the door of my London flat like a death sentence wrapped in innocence. I was making tea, Earl Grey, 2 sugars, the ritual that kept me human, when I heard the whisper of paper on wood. My hand froze mid-pour. No one knew this address. Not so. Not my handler. Not even the woman I'd left behind in Berlin 3 months ago, the one whose face still haunted my sleep. I set down the kettle and approached the door like it might explode. The photograph showed 2 people in a cafe. The woman was beautiful. Dark hair, elegant coat, a slight smile playing at her lips. The man across from her wore a Gestapo uniform. They were holding hands. The woman was Elise Hoffman, my contact in Berlin, the best intelligence operative the British had inside the Reich. The woman I'd trusted with my life a dozen times. The woman I'd kissed goodbye in a dark and safe house, promising I'd come back for her. On the back of the photograph, in neat German script, she's been ours for 6 months. How many of your people died because you loved her? Hey, Heinrich Kruger, the Gestapo's most ruthless interrogator. The man who'd been hunting me across Europe for 2 years. My hands shook as I turned the photograph over again, studying Elise's face, looking for signs of coercion, finding only that damnable smile. The tea kettle screamed behind me, a sound like air raid sirens. I had 48 hours before my next mission briefing. 48 hours to decide, was the woman I loved a traitor? And if she was, could I be the one to kill her? But to understand how Captain James Hawthorne of His Majesty's Special Operations Executive came to stand in a cold London flat, holding evidence of his own betrayal, you need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the night I parachuted into occupied France with nothing but a false identity, a cyanide pill, and the certainty that I would die before the war ended. Back to the moment I learned that in the world of shadows and lies, the deadliest enemy isn't the one who hates you. It's the one you love. It's the one you love. March 1943, somewhere over occupied France, the Lancaster bomber shuddered through anti-aircraft fire as I stood in the open bomb bay, wind screaming past my face at 120 miles per hour. Below me, France was nothing but darkness punctuated by distant fires, the evidence of someone else's bombing run, someone else's war. 30 seconds, the dispatcher shouted over the engine roar. I checked my gear one final time. Parachute, secure, pistol, loaded. Loaded! Safety on. Cyanide capsule, nestled in the false tooth, ready for the moment I couldn't bear what came next. Identity papers, perfectly forged, declaring me to be Mitchell Dubois, a French factory worker returning from a labor stint in Germany. My real name was James Hawthorne. Yeah. Captain, British Army, seconded to so, Special Operations Executive, Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I spoke 4 languages fluently, could kill a man in 7 different ways, and had been behind enemy lines 6 times. This was my 7th mission. Lucky 7. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. The dispatcher's hand on my shoulder. I could see his face in the dim red light, young, maybe 20, probably terrified every time he sent men like me into the dark. He'd never know if we lived or died. We just disappeared into the night. Go, go, go! I jumped. The slipstream caught me like a giant's fist, spinning me violently before the chute deployed with a bone-jarring snap. Suddenly, the world went quiet. The bomber's roar faded. I was alone in the vast silence of the occupied sky, floating down toward enemy territory with nothing but the wind in my hammering heart for company. The ground rushed up faster than expected. I hit hard, rolled, came up in a crouch with my pistol drawn. Darkness. The smell of wet earth. Distant dogs barking. I was alive. Step 1 complete. Troop movements, industrial capacity, or something more? Exotic? I hesitated. Operational security demanded I tell her nothing. But I also needed her help to get into Germany. Something exotic, I admitted. The rumors are true then. The Germans are building a new weapon. A new weapon. She sat back, her expression grave. I've been hearing whispers for months. A weapon that could change the war. Scientists working in secret. Massive resources being diverted. But no one knows details. Do you have contacts in Berlin? I have contacts everywhere. She sipped her tea, her eyes never leaving mine. The question is, are you worth the risk? My network took years to build. If you're captured, if you talk, hundreds of people will die. I won't talk. Everyone talks eventually, she said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. The Gestapo is very good at what they do. The question is how long you can resist. Hours, days, long enough for us to disappear? I have a cyanide pill. Good. Use it if you're caught. Don't hesitate. Don't think you can resist just one more session. Her voice was cold, clinical. I've seen what they do to captured agents. Death is preferable. A German officer walked past our table, his boots clicking on the tile floor. Elise's expression didn't change, but I noticed her hand had moved beneath the table to a weapon, probably. Nay. I can get you into Berlin, she said when the officer had passed. But we do this my way. You follow my rules exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. The only thing that matters is completing the mission and staying alive long enough to get the intelligence back to London. Agreed. Good. Trot. She stood, leaving coins on the table for the tea. Meet me tomorrow at the Luxembourg Gardens, North Entrance, 10 tarot hours. Bring nothing that identifies you as British. From now on, you're my cousin from Alsace. We're traveling to Berlin so I can visit my aunt who's ill. Understood? Understood? Understood. Pinta. She paused, studying me one last time. You have kind eyes, Michelle, or whatever your real name is. Kind eyes get people killed in this war. Learn to make them harder, or you won't survive Berlin. Then she was gone, disappearing into the Paris crowds, like smoke. The journey east, the train to Berlin, was packed with Wehrmacht soldiers, war workers, and civilians navigating the increasingly desperate geography of occupied Europe. Elise and I sat in a second-class compartment, playing our roles perfectly. Cousins traveling together, she animated and chatty, I quiet and reserved. She transformed my identity completely. New papers, new backstory, even new mannerisms. She taught me how to walk like a French civilian accustomed to occupation, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes down, the body language of someone who'd learned not to attract attention. The key, she told me during our preparation, is to be boring. The Gestapo looks for inconsistencies, nervousness, anything unusual. So be the most forgettable person on the train, gray, invisible. But Elise herself was anything but invisible. She charmed the soldiers in our compartment, laughing at their jokes, sharing food from her bag, playing the role of a friendly French woman who bore the Germans no ill will. I watched her work with grudging admiration. She was a master of human psychology, knowing exactly how to disarm suspicion. Your cousin is very quiet, one soldier observed, nodding toward me. Jean Mitchell is always quiet, Elise said with an indulgent smile. He's been morose ever since his wife died. I keep telling him he needs to move on, but grief makes men stubborn, yes? The soldier nodded sympathetically. Yes, the soldier nodded sympathetically. I lost my brother at Stalingrad, the grief. It changes you. Elise reached across and patted his hand. Then you understand, we're all just trying to survive this terrible war. It was a brilliant improvisation. He'd given me a reason to be withdrawn, transformed my nervousness into grief, and created a bond with the soldiers through shared loss. By the time we reached the German border, the soldiers were vouching for us at the checkpoint. We passed through without incident. That night, in a boarding house in Frankfurt where we broke our journey, Elise slipped into my room after the other guests had gone to sleep. We need to discuss your mission, she whispered, sitting on the edge of my bed. Tomorrow we'll be in Berlin. Once we're there, everything becomes more dangerous. The Gestapo is everywhere. One mistake, and we're both dead. Tell me about your network in Berlin. I have 3 primary contacts. One is a secretary in the Reich Ministry of Armaments. One is a Wehrmacht officer disillusioned with the Nazi regime. The third, she hesitated. The third is a Gestapo officer. I stared at her. You're running a Gestapo officer? I'm not running him. He's a friend. From before the war, her expression was unreadable. He doesn't know I work for the resistance. He thinks I'm simply a French woman trying to survive. But he trusts me. He talks to me, and I listen. That's incredibly dangerous. Everything about this war is dangerous. She met my eyes. His name is Heinrich Kruger. He's ruthless, intelligent, and absolutely loyal to the Reich. But he's also lonely. His wife died in a bombing raid. He has no one to talk to. So he talks to me. And you're going to use him to get intelligence about the secret weapon. If I can. If the opportunity arises. She stood, moving toward the door. You should know something else, Michelle, or whatever your real name is. I don't believe in causes anymore. I don't believe in grand ideals or noble sacrifices. I do this work because I'm good at it, and because the alternative is surrendering to monsters. I'm not a hero, I'm a survivor, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep surviving. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand who you're working with. I'm not the brave resistance fighter your people in London imagine. I'm a woman who's learned to manipulate, to lie, to seduce when necessary. I've done things I'm not proud of. I'll do worse things before this war ends. She opened the door, paused. The difference between me and the Gestapo isn't morality. It's only that I'm fighting for the side I believe will create a better world after the killing stops. She left me alone with that thought, and I lay awake for hours wondering if she was warning me or testing me, or if there was any difference between the two. Heart of Darkness, Berlin in 1943 was a city living on borrowed time. The Allied bombing raids had begun in earnest and whole neighborhoods lay in ruins. But the government buildings still stood, imposing and brutal, monuments to a regime that refused to acknowledge its coming defeat. Police led me through this wounded city with confidence, navigating the checkpoints and patrols with practiced ease. Her aunt's apartment was in Charlottenburg, a respectable neighborhood that had so far escaped the worst of the bombing. The aunt, Frau Müller, was a carefully constructed fiction. The apartment actually belonged to Elise's network, a safe house maintained by a real woman named Frau Müller who was genuinely sympathetic to the resistance. She welcomed us warmly, fussing over Elise, accepting me as family. "You'll stay here as long as you need," she told me in German. "Elise has explained that you're helping with certain matters. You're safe here." "Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the British when they liberate us from these Nazi pigs." She spat the words with surprising venom for such a grandmotherly figure. My husband was executed for speaking against Hitler. My son died in Russia. I'll do whatever I can to make them pay. That night, Elise and I sat in the apartment's small kitchen, speaking in whispers while Frau Müller slept. "Your contact in the Ministry of Armaments," I said. "When can I meet her?" "Tomorrow." "But we need to be careful. She's been under suspicion lately. The Gestapo knows someone is leaking information. They just haven't identified who." Elise poured us both small glasses of schnapps. "If they're watching her, they'll see you meet. We need a plausible reason for the contact. What do you suggest?" "A romantic encounter. You meet at a cafe, you flirt, you arrange to see her again. The Gestapo expects people to have affairs during wartime. It's the perfect cover. And if they investigate more deeply, then we improvise." She raised her glass. "To improvisation, the spy's best friend." We drank, and in that moment, with her eyes bright in the dim light, I saw something beyond the professional operative. A woman who'd been carrying the weight of war for too long. A woman who was exhausted, frightened, and doing it anyway. "Why do you really do this?" I asked. The truth, not the survivor speech. Elise was quiet for a long time. "I had a sister," she finally said. "Sophie," she finally said. "Sophie. She was younger than me. Sweet believed the best of everyone. When the Nazis came to power, she thought it was just politics. She thought if we kept our heads down, everything would be fine." Her voice went flat. "In 1941, Sophie helped a Jewish family hide in our building. Someone informed on her. The Gestapo came. She was arrested, tried, executed. She was 22. I'm sorry. I'm not doing this for grand ideals, Michelle. I'm doing it because my sister believed in helping people, and she died for it. So now I help people too. But I do it smart. I do it careful. And I survive." Because Sophie didn't. She stood abruptly, walked to the window, stared out at the darkened city. "Tomorrow you meet my contact. You get your intelligence. And then we get you out of Germany before the Gestapo finds us. That's the mission. Nothing more." But as I watched her silhouette against the window, I knew it was already more complicated than that. I was beginning to care about Elise Hoffman. And in our world of shadows and lies, caring about someone was the most dangerous mission of all.